When I first found out that my grandmother was going to get a tattoo, I thought she was joking. I didn't even have words at that moment. I just stood in the middle of her kitchen and watched her calmly pour tea into the old porcelain cups with their worn golden rims. It felt strange to hear such a statement from someone who was 70 years old. For me, my grandmother had always been the embodiment of calmness and stability. She wore long skirts, a scarf on her head, and always carried a small purse with barbarous candies. She knew recipes for every illness, from a cold to a broken heart. She never hurried, because she lived in a rhythm where the world seemed simpler and more understandable. And here was this same woman suddenly telling me, "I've decided to get a tattoo, a big one, covering my whole back." I almost choked on my bun. "Grandma," I said, once I managed to recover a bit, "what for? You're 70. She lifted her clear gray eyes to me and smiled. See, you're the first one to mention age. But I don't feel 70. Inside, I feel young. And at last, I want to do what I was afraid to do all my life." That conversation burned into my memory. It turned out she had wanted a tattoo since her youth. Back when she first saw sailors with drawings on their arms at the port, she dreamed of a large image that would remind her of dreams, of freedom, and of the truth that the heart can remain young even when the hair has turned gray. But at that time, such a decision was impossible. What would the neighbor say? What would my mother think? She had asked herself those questions her whole life. And only now had she decided it was time to stop being afraid. I laughed, I joked, I tried to talk her out of it. But in her voice there was such certainty that I realized it was useless. She would do it no matter what. And sure enough, a few days later, she asked me to drive her to a tattoo studio. The artist, a guy about 30 with a beard and mustache, at first didn't believe her. He thought it was some sort of prank. But Grandma firmly explained what she wanted. She had brought a notebook where she had kept drawings from her youth. They were unusual combinations of flowers, waves, birds, and old ornaments. She wanted her back to blossom with a huge garden full of roses and flying birds, among which were hidden symbols of her life. "This is the apple tree," she pointed at one drawing. "In my childhood, our whole family would gather under it. And these swallows, they always return home. And this lighthouse, that's my reminder that I always dreamed of seeing the sea." The artist listened with surprise. He agreed, though he warned that the work would be long and painful. But Grandma only shrugged. "I've lived 70 years. A little pain won't scare me." And indeed, over the following weeks she went to her sessions. And during the needle that was painting the story of her life onto her skin, I accompanied her almost every time. At first, it was strange for me to see her like this, small, hunched, but at the same time so strong. The studio smelled of ink and antiseptic, and she sat calmly, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Only sometimes she clenched her fists. I watched as the artist, step by step, brought to life an entire universe on her back. With each session, new colors appeared, new details emerged. Roses bloomed, swallows soared into the sky, waves rolled in one after another. It was more than a tattoo. It was a story embodied in ink. And then came the day when the work was finished. The artist called me to the chair where Grandma was sitting. She lifted her blouse, and I froze. Before me was a huge, colorful tattoo, so vivid it seemed to breathe. There was the apple tree, blooming with white flowers, with birds flying among its branches, and in the distance a lighthouse glowing in the sunlight. The entire image seemed to contain her life, her dreams, and her unfulfilled wishes. "How do you like it, grandson?" she asked, smiling. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. In that tattoo, I saw not just a beautiful drawing but the imprint of my grandmother's soul. From that day on, she changed. Now, she didn't become a different person. She was still the same caring grandmother who baked pies and asked about my life. But in her eyes, a new spark appeared. She walked with her head held high, as if she had finally won a battle with herself. The neighbors looked at her in surprise. Some even whispered behind her back. But Grandma no longer cared. "I've lived too long to be afraid of what others think," she told me once. "This is my body, my life, and my story. And you know, I realized that this was her strength. She had lived her years caring for others, putting her own wishes off for later. And now, when everyone expected calmness and silence from her, she decided to give herself something bold. Now every time I see her back with that enormous tattoo, I remember that dreams have no expiration date. They can wait for decades, hiding in old notebooks and hearts, but the day will come when you find the courage to bring them to life. And I am proud that it was my grandmother who taught me this.